Hi everyone, Tyler Mannion here, Vice President of the NPC and IFBB Pro League. And today we're going to be going over the recap for the Classic Physique division of the Arnold Classic. First, we're going to go over the comparison between Wesley and Ramone, and we'll do that pose by pose. Now, before we go into it, I think this is a good lesson for all competitors that you don't have to have the same structure as everybody else to win a show. As you know, Wesley's waist is definitely a little bit wider than Ramone's, then Chris's, then even, Ers and Brion. However, Wesley has now built up his shoulders and his width so much to compensate for that, where he has a very, very crazy shape and taper as well. So all shapes and sizes can come in and do very well in this Classic Physique division. Now let's get to the poses. First up is the front double bicep pose. Now, here in pre-judging, which is where the judging takes place. Now again, guys, Classic Physique judging, it takes place in the morning. At night is a confirmation round where we relook at everything, okay? But the real judging is done in the morning for Classic Physique. Now, in the morning, Wesley straight up nailed it. Everything was crisp. Every line was deep, okay? In that front double bicep, he is taking up more space on the stage than Ramone. His taper is just as good. His arms are even better. His chest is full. His quads are taking up the same amount of space as Ramone's, and the cuts and the lines are much, much deeper. Overall, top to bottom, he is balanced, and he looks better than Ramone in this pose. Ramone, for me, looked a little bit downsized. He also did not have clear separation in his quads. He also hurts himself with his posing. He does not bring his arms up the way he needs to bring them. He stops short. His arms are too low, which affects his taper and affects how his lats pop out. His posing hurts him considerably in a lot of these poses. Next up is the side chest pose. Now in the side chest, you can see Wesley made big improvements in his side leg. His side leg, his hamstring is now more balanced to his quad. Upper body-wise, his chest was extremely full. His arms and shoulders were very, very big. And when you compare it to Ramone, he has more width across the top from shoulder to shoulder. His chest is thicker, his arms look better, and his side leg is comparable. Same thing here with Ramone. He likes to shrug his back shoulder up to try to push his chest over, which hurts him when it comes to his width from up top. He's always moving around in his pose. He does not stay static, which tends to make people mess up their posing. And for him, he definitely hurts himself here as well. Again, the cuts and the separation, Wesley had much more detail than Ramone as well. So right now, I have it 2-0 in poses for Wesley. Next up was the back double bicep pose. Now, the back double bicep pose in the morning, Wesley's back, it had a lot of depth. The taper was great. His shoulder and arms were big, separated, and detailed. Now, you go down to his lower body. Yes, does he need more hamstrings and glutes? This is definitely the main critique for his physique. However, in the morning with the conditioning, his hamstrings were separated and fuller, and it was enough for me to give him the nod in this back double bicep pose over Ramone. Now, why was it enough? Is because Ramone, his back, the width of it did not compare really to Wesley's. His depth was not great as well. He was pinching a lot through his traps, not opening up his lats all the way. I think that definitely hurt him in this pose. Now, lower body-wise, his legs are thicker and more complete than Wesley's. However, again, the conditioning compared from Wesley to Ramone, it was pretty differentiated with Wesley being more conditioned and more separated. So overall, top to bottom, again, Wesley won this pose for me, and it was 3-0. The next up is the ab and thighs pose. This pose I gave to Ramone. Wesley's abs are not separated and detailed like his. He kind of crunches down a little bit too much. So Ramone has great abs, especially when he blows all the air out. The abs are deep and separated. He pulled the vacuum pretty well, actually. Now, his quads still did not have the same type of separation that they needed to, but overall, when you look at the flow of the pose, he was better than Wesley here, which will make it 3-1. And then we get into your favorite classic pose. Again, Ramone hurts himself with this pose. He does not open up all the way. He doesn't raise his arm where he's making the bicep flex. He does not raise it up the way he should. He sinks down into the pose. He's not getting his lats out all the way. His quads were not as separated as they needed to be here. Wesley standing right next to him, his chest was full, his arms look great, his shoulder looks great, his width looks great, and his quads are separated and taking up just as much as room on stage as Ramone's. So 4-1 for me, Wesley took this from Ramone. I think for Wesley, the main focus for him is hamstrings and glutes to complete his physique for the Olympia. He needs to bring this trademark conditioning and fullness that he just brought to this show. I've judged Wesley quite a few times, and he has bounced around when he has not peaked right. He's done great, and he's done not so great. So this just shows you that we see what we see on the day of the show. It doesn't matter what happened previously. This guy was 7th at the Olympia, and he just beat the reigning Arnold Classic champion and reigning 2-time runner-up at the Olympia because he made improvements with his physique, and he nailed it on that day. When it comes to Ramone, I was able to find Ramone backstage and really work on him with his posing because his posing holds him back big time. It doesn't matter who it's against, any of these guys. He's not posing to his potential. Finally, I got to work with him, and it's amazing just backstage after the finals what a difference changing some of his poses made to his physique. But also going forward, he needs to add the size back on that he had. He needs to add more density, especially to his back. That was one of his main focuses. Width and density to his back, but just overall the size and the separation that we saw him bring prior to this, he needs to get back to that level and exceed it if he wants to win and be contending to win for Mr. Olympia title. Next up, we have Ers and Brion, who were in 3rd and 4th. But I think this is a good time to educate everybody. At these big shows like the Arnold and the Olympia, we have 11 judges at the table. So when you see the scores aren't straight scores, meaning for 3rd place, straight scores would be 15. For 4th place, it would be 20. So at the Olympia, you saw it was 17 to 18 between them. Here it was 16 to 19. If it's a 1-point decision, that means 6 judges like one person and 5 judges like the other. At this show, 7 judges liked Ers, 4 judges like Brion. Now, I want to explain this because for me, I can clearly see how Brion could beat Ers at this show. So when we look at the front double bicep from prejudging, Ers to me was off when it comes to his trademark conditioning and separation. Now in the front double here, Brion, you can see his arms are better. He has a great taper. Even though from the front, his quads are a good bit smaller and it leaves him a little bit unbalanced in the front poses with how small his quads have gotten. They're very clearly separated. It still flows good enough where Ers's quads weren't showing, the normal separation he has. And I think he's lacking in the bicep department. For me, in the front double bicep, Brion takes it. Now here in the side chest, this is more of what I would say would be a toss-up pose for the judges. Brion's chest is flatter, but it is striated. His side leg still looks good. His arms and shoulders look good as well. Ers's arms and shoulders look a little bit better in the side chest than I think they do in the front double bicep pose. However, he still needs to add more mass here. His chest is actually rounder and fuller than Brion's and still conditioned, and the side leg is very comparable. So for this pose, I can see how different judges can see it different ways, but for me at this show, I had Brion taking this pose. So next is the back double bicep pose. This pose, Ers really, really needs to improve on. He wasn't opening up his back all the way at prejudging as well. He still needs more depth and detail back there. Again, the arms and shoulders come into play because we're looking at the arms and shoulders as well. That needs to come up. From the waist down, his legs are great. He has great hamstring development. His legs take up, a good amount of space on stage. He has good leg width. Now, when you look at Brion has one of the best back doubles for classic physique. His back is insanely detailed with a lot of depth to it. His biceps are peaked. There's separation. His shoulders look great. And from the rear, his legs still look good. He has very detailed hamstrings. And his leg width from the back is much better than his leg width from the front. Next up is the ab and thigh pose. Here, Brion pose is a little bit small for me. He still has great abs. However, His taper doesn't look good. He's a little bit too crunched down. He could use obviously more to his quads in this pose. It would definitely help him. Ers has a great ab and thigh pose. His abs are very, very deep. He has a great taper. He is able to flex his quad to show the striations and the detail in it. So for me, Ers takes the ab and thigh pose. And then what I would say again is a toss-up pose for your favorite classic pose. Ers really shows off his shape and detail to his physique with this pose, with the half lat spread, half front double bicep hybrid up top. He's able to make his chest look a little bit thicker in this pose. He's able to show off his taper a little bit better. His legs, still look pretty good. They could still be a little bit more separated here in the morning. Brion does the crucifix pose, which is an awesome pose. But again, his legs are a little bit small. His quads are small in the front. They need to have more sweep. They need to have more width from the front here. He also just looks a little bit smaller in this pose, not just in stature, but when you're comparing him, you see that he was next to Wesley or Ramone, at the prejudging. He looks just a little bit smaller. So size-wise, he's looking, less big than these guys that are taking up more space on stage. Again, though, Brion's detail here really shone through. So overall, you can see that even if a judge may have someone in third or in fourth, the whole panel, that's why there's 11 judges. So just because I think something or Steve thinks something or Sandy thinks something doesn't mean that's how the whole entire show is judged. That's why we have 11 people and we get rid of, at these shows, the 3 highs and the 3 lows from the scores. So that's how the scores happen. And I think going forward for these two, I already mentioned Ers, he needs to improve the arms and the shoulders. His conditioning, I've seen him better before. He's been more separated and more conditioned. He looked better at the finals than he did for sure in the morning, but still, it wasn't the best Ers that we've seen. For Brion, I think he's just needs to add more size. His legs, especially his quads, which 3 poses are coming from the front. So the downsized legs really take a toll on him. He needs to try to bring those back up. Overall, size-wise, I think he's just down a little bit, which as you get older, it is tougher to maintain that size with his trademark conditioning. And then the side chest pose, his chest is striated, but it can also be rounder and fuller, so he can add a little bit more there. Now, classic physique is a crazy talented division, as we've seen over the last couple of years. If you're not on, there's about probably 8 guys in the world that will have something to say if they're fully on. So you can't afford to slip, you can't afford to be off, and you can't afford to not bring your best because, again, Ramone won't be there, but the other 3 guys are going to be in the UK in 2 weeks. We have no idea how they're going to peak and how they're going to look on stage day. No one is so far ahead of the other that they can afford to just be off and think they're going to win the show. So it's a very exciting time for this category, and I'm looking forward to seeing these guys in 2 weeks.